Evolution, where construction meets innovation.
Evolution. Let's build the future together.
Welcome. Just this past weekend, we saw a really stark reminder of how quickly things can change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that glacier break in the Swiss Alps caused a mountain slide. I mean, it literally buried a village and then dammed up a river, creating this massive flood risk. It really highlights something we're hearing more and more about.
What's that?
This growing need for preparedness. And not just, traditional defense stuff, but civil disasters, often tied straight to climate change.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe a mountain won't slide into your backyard. Hopefully not.
Right.
But these extreme weather events, particularly heavy rain, floods, they're becoming much more frequent. And they demand, serious preparation.
And Germany, like a lot of places, is really focusing on getting ready for the Ernstfall, the serious emergency.
They are?
But that preparation, it isn't just about, say, building higher walls or having funds ready. A huge piece, a really crucial piece, is training the people.
The responders on the ground.
Exactly, the ones who'll be there in those chaotic moments. And that's exactly where our deep dive is taking us today.
Yeah.
To the University of Duisburg-Essen. They've developed this, fascinating and pretty innovative way to train emergency responders.
Yes, they have. They've created something called the Planspiel. Basically, it's a simulation game.
A game.
Well, sort of. It's specifically designed for this context. It's called Einsatz in Grimhausen.
Which means?
Operation in Grimhausen. Grimhausen being the fictional place it's set.
Okay. Einsatz in Grimhausen. Let's unpack this then. Our mission for this deep dive is really to explore what this simulation game actually is.
Right.
Dig into why it's seen as so important for training, especially now with these increasing civil disasters. Understand how it actually works, like on the table.
Yeah, the mechanics of it.
Then figure out who it's really designed to help prepare. We're drawing straight from the sources you shared on this.
And it's important to note, this isn't just some academic theory. It's a tool built with practitioners, for practitioners.
From the front lines, essentially. Okay, so first things first. What exactly is a Planspiel in this kind of setting? You said it's not really a game like...
Right, the sources are clear. It's not like Monopoly or, Settlers of Catan where you're competing to win.
Okay. Not about beating the other players then?
No, not at all. It's better described as an interactive learning format. It simulates real situations, participants step into specific roles within that scenario.
So you're playing a part, like incident commander? Or...
Exactly, or head of a rescue team, something like that. And the core idea is that they make decisions, often under pressure. And then they directly experience the consequences of those decisions, but critically within the simulation-safe environment.
So it's learning by doing, but without real lives on the line. You get to see what happens and reflect.
Precisely. The emphasis is really heavily on competence-oriented learning. It's about learning through action, through making those tough calls.
Right.
And then, really importantly, reflecting on what happened and why. It's a format that's particularly powerful for complex, dynamic situations, where things change fast.
Which sounds exactly like a disaster response scenario.
Perfect description.
Yeah.
So it's less about just memorizing procedures from a book.
Although that's important too, I assume.
Of course. But this focuses much more on practicing teamwork, clear communication, and effective decision-making when everything's hitting the fan.
Makes sense. And this specific Planspiel, Einsatz in Grimhausen, it focuses squarely on floods.
Yes.
Why floods in particular? Was there a specific reason?
Oh, definitely. A very intentional choice. Floods are, unfortunately, frequent events in many areas.
True.
They're often incredibly difficult to predict precisely how bad they'll get, where exactly, and they're just inherently demanding to manage. Widespread impact, things change constantly.
Then with climate change.
Exactly. These high water situations are only becoming more relevant, potentially more extreme. So you need preparation on every level, political, financial, and crucially, the human training level. Got it. Okay, so we have this flood simulation, Einsatz in Grimhausen. The sources call it a realistic exercise simulation, even a tabletop exercise. That sounds not digital.
That's right. And that's a really key point the developers stress. It's played out on a physical board.
Like a literal map on a table.
Yeah, essentially a large map laid out on a table.
That feels almost old school. In our super digital age, why go analog with this?
Well, it's actually a very deliberate design decision, not just a lack of tech.
Okay.
The thinking is that the physical format, having everyone gathered around the same table looking at the same map, actively promotes direct communication.
Face-to-face.
Exactly. Intense collaboration. And it fosters a truly shared understanding of the situation as it evolves, something maybe harder to get when everyone's staring at their own screen.
I can see that. Less isolation.
Right. Everyone experiences the Betroffenheit, that's a German word, kind of means the feeling of being directly impacted or concerned by what's happening. They experience it together.
A shared sense of urgency. Precisely. And this physical collaborative approach, it actually aligns really well with established effective methods in disaster training. Think EU-level tabletop exercises, or TTCs,
Okay.
or even methods used in places like Japan, where they use similar analog tools for earthquake and tsunami response training. It's about fostering that vital human interaction under pressure.
It makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, so tell us about the scenario itself. It's set in this fictional Grimhausen.
Yes, a fictional city they created. The scenario simulates a dynamic, escalating high-water situation, triggered by heavy rain, like you often see.
And it's dynamic, meaning it changes.
Constantly. It even incorporates a bit of randomness right from the start, like maybe you roll dice to determine the initial severity of the flood or specific early events.
Okay, interesting. So the dice are rolled, the rain's pouring in Grimhausen, the water's rising. How does the game actually play out for the people around the table?
Right, so the participants take on specific roles. You might be representing the fire brigade, maybe the DLRG.
That's the water rescue, folks.
Yeah, the German Life Saving Association focused on water rescue. Or maybe the THW, the Technical Relief Agency.
Got it. Different agencies, different roles.
Exactly. And as the simulation progresses, usually in rounds, the scenario evolves. Water levels keep rising. And then the critical emergency calls, the Notruf, start coming in.
Calls for help from different parts of the city?
Right, through different affected areas. And the team, playing their different roles, has to collectively figure out what to do.
So it's a group effort.
Absolutely. They have to decide together, plan together, act together. Where do we prioritize our limited resources?
Limited resources.
Yeah.
Always the challenge.
Always. So where do we try to defend against the water? Where do we focus on rescuing people? Are there situations where we might even have to make the tough call to strategically pull back from an area?
Difficult decisions.
Very. And they also have to coordinate the actual deployment of things like vehicles, boats, maybe generators for power. And they have to deal with the very real possibility that some of those resources might be scarce or suddenly become unavailable.
Just like in a real emergency. Managing limited assets under growing pressure. What kind of physical stuff do they use? You mentioned the map.
Yeah, the game uses tangible materials meant to feel real. There are these physical maps of Grimhausen based on real-world inspired topography.
Okay.
And they can actually be swapped out or changed under a glass frame as the flood gets worse to visually show the rising water levels.
Oh, neat. So the map itself changes.
Yeah. They also use little game figures to represent the emergency units and resources. Dice, like I mentioned, to introduce chance or make things escalate.
Right.
And crucially, event cards. These pop up and introduce new, unexpected challenges, just like real life.
Like what kind of challenges?
Oh, maybe a key bridge suddenly collapses, cutting off access, or a vital piece of equipment, maybe a pump, becomes unavailable. Or you might have to deal with an environmental problem, like an oil spill spreading on the floodwaters.
Wow. Okay, so it keeps you on your toes.
Definitely. And the whole thing proceeds in structured rounds. It mimics a real command process, often following what they call a leadership cycle.
A leadership cycle.
Yeah, basically. First, you assess the current situation, what's happening right now. Then, based on that, you assign and deploy your forces, make your plan for the round. And finally, you evaluate the outcome of that round before the next one begins. See what worked, what didn't.
That structured approach sounds really useful, especially for training command staff. And you mentioned it's a safe environment.
Yes, that's another absolutely key benefit. The plan spiel creates what they call a fail-safe environment.
Fail-safe, meaning?
Meaning it's designed to be realistic enough to be genuinely challenging, to force difficult choices. But you can make mistakes. You can try things. And there are no real-world consequences if it goes wrong.
Which is essential for actually learning, right? You need room to mess up.
Exactly. That's where the deep learning happens. And the simulation doesn't just end when the scenario's over. It concludes with a structured debriefing session.
Like an after-action review.
Very much like that. Modeled after a post-incident review, following a real emergency. Participants reflect on the decisions they made, the outcomes. They talk about what went well, what didn't.
And pull out the lessons learned.
Right, integrate those lessons.
Yeah.
And the goal, again, isn't about one team winning. It's about the whole group successfully working together to manage the flood scenario as effectively as possible under the circumstances. Collaboration is key.
What really strikes me about this is how it was developed. You mentioned it wasn't just academics in a lab somewhere.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, fundamental to why it's working and why it's being accepted, especially by experienced emergency personnel.
How so?
It was created using an approach called design-based research. Now, that sounds a bit academic.
A little bit, yeah.
But what it really means is that the development process is rooted equally in theory and in practice. They work hand in hand.
Okay. Theory and practice together.
Yeah. It's an iterative cycle. They developed a prototype, then they tested it extensively in practice with real responders from different organizations.
So they took it out to fire stations, DLRG groups.
Exactly. Gathered detailed feedback from the people who actually do this work. And then they refined and improved the game based directly on that input.
So it's a constant loop. Design, test with users, get feedback, refine, test again.
Precisely. Development, testing with practitioners, feedback, more development. And crucially, this wasn't an afterthought. It was developed with active input and partnership right from the beginning.
Partnership with who?
With practitioners from across the different emergency services, various fire brigades, the DLRG, the THW, and others were involved from the get-go. It really embodies this principle of co-creation.
Co-creation, meaning it was built together.
Yeah, a tool truly from practice, for practice.
That phrase really sums it up.
It does. And it means it's not seen as some academic exercise handed down from an ivory tower. The very people who understand the pressures and realities on the ground during a crisis helped shape the tool.
Which must be absolutely vital for getting buy-in, right? Especially from seasoned responders.
Totally vital. For acceptance, for perceived realism. If experienced people feel it reflects their reality, they'll engage with it. This collaborative approach is arguably why it's proving so effective.
That makes perfect sense. So where does Einsatz in Grimhausen stand right now? Is it being actively used?
Well, the prototype itself is complete. The board, materials, scenario outlines, the roles, the structure that's all developed.
Okay.
It's currently in what sounds like a pretty extensive testing phase. They're actively running it with numerous partner organizations.
Which ones?
The sources list quite a few different chapters of the German Red Cross, DRK, and the Bavarian Red Cross, BRK, various DLRG groups, THW training centers, and a diverse range of fire brigades, too.
So getting broad exposure.
Definitely. And they've also made it clear their network is open. They're welcoming other interested organizations to get involved, test it out, and contribute to its ongoing development.
That's great. And what's the early feedback like? What are these organizations and participants saying?
So far, the feedback reported is really very positive.
It's good to hear.
They're seeing consistently high motivation from participants during the sessions. People get really into it.
It's engaged.
Yeah. And they've observed that playing through the scenarios seems to improve understanding of operational logic, how things actually need to work in a coordinated response.
Ah, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. Participants themselves are reporting significant learning gains, especially in those crucial soft skills like team communication and effectively managing responsibility within a complex, stressful situation.
So it sounds like it's hitting the marks they were aiming for.
It really seems to be delivering the kind of learning outcomes they hoped for. And as a nice bit of external validation, it actually won third place in the German Planspiel Prize, the German Simulation Game Award, back in 2023.
Oh, wow. That's some serious recognition. Okay, so who is this game ultimately for? Who's the main target audience?
Well, the primary target group is definitely personnel who are either still in training or already active members of those core emergency and aid organizations.
Fire Brigade, DLRG, THW Rescue Services.
Exactly. For them, it provides practical, hands-on training in a way that's realistic but still safe. That's invaluable.
But the sources hinted it could be used more broadly than just the pros.
Absolutely. They see several secondary target groups where this could be really valuable.
Like who?
For instance, vocational schools and universities, especially in fields where understanding disaster scenarios is directly relevant. Think civil engineering, water management, environmental tech.
Makes sense for students in those areas.
Right. Also, municipal crisis teams and administrative staff. They could use it for scenario planning, maybe testing their own emergency procedures, improving how different town departments coordinate.
Practicing their own roles before a real event.
Precisely. And then Interestingly, they also see potential in general education settings, maybe for younger people.
In schools.
Potentially in the context of what's called Education for Sustainable Development, BNE in German.
Okay, what would be the goal there?
The goal would be broader understanding, helping young people grasp how natural environments are changing, why civil protection is important, and why being prepared, both individually and as a community, really matters.
So it's incredibly versatile. It could go from training highly experienced commanders right down to potentially educating high school students.
Exactly. It seems designed to be adaptable and interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Useful in different formats, maybe a focused project week at a school, a module in a professional training course, or even just for raising general awareness about civil protection in a town or community.
That's quite a range.
And there's even a hopeful note in the sources. Perhaps participating in a simulation like this might actually inspire some people to volunteer.
To join one of those aid organizations themselves.
Yeah, to become part of the solution.
Okay, so wrapping this up,
Right.
what's the big picture here? What does this all mean?
Well, I think Einsatz in Grimhausen really represents a leading-edge way of thinking about training for these really complex modern disasters.
Yeah. It's practical, it's highly collaborative, and it seems genuinely engaging. It teaches those crucial skills, teamwork, communication, decision-making,
Right.
which frankly are often more critical in a crisis than just knowing the technical details.
The human element again.
Exactly. And because it was co-created with the people who live this reality, it successfully blends that academic thinking with essential, hard-won, real-world experience.
And, in a world that seems to be facing more and more civil disasters, driven by things like climate change,
Yeah.
this kind of thoughtful, effective preparation feels more vital than ever.
Couldn't agree more.
Understanding how our emergency responders actually train gives us, I think, a much better appreciation for the incredibly complex coordination that's required when a real crisis hits.
Which sort of brings
Thanks for
up a
listening.
final
Thanks for
thought,
having
doesn't
me.
it?
Go on. And
Well,
we'll see
given
you
the
next time
potential we've
for another
discussed
deep
for this
dive.
kind of
Looking forward
simulation,
to it.
teaching teamwork, communication, strategy in such a tangible way, and considering they're looking at using it beyond just the professionals, maybe in communities, maybe in schools.
Could bringing this kind of tangible simulation-based learning approach to a much wider audience, could that fundamentally change our collective preparedness, our resilience as a society for whatever might come next?
Taking it beyond the experts to everyone, that's definitely something to think about. All right, well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and we'll catch you next time.
This was Revolution.
Where construction meets innovation. Until next time, keep building the future.